Hello to everyone, and my favorite audience, the hospice volunteers. Today we're going to be talking about veterans' issues at the end of life. I'm Connie Arens. I'm a full-time employee at Mercy Medical Center, and Mary Clapp is the one that organized this PowerPoint so that we can share this with new hospice volunteers that may come up, and to all of you. You are really the cornerstone for our veterans that come into our hospice program, or even if you do visit someone at the hospital that is a veteran, you are the ones that will be listening to everything that they are talking about. I am a veteran. I was in the Army Nurse Corps for 21 years, and I was deployed to Germany 2006-2007 to care for all of our wounded that came in from Iraq and Afghanistan. We would receive 3 plane loads a day. And our veterans, what we did mostly as nurses caring for them was just listen to them. After they came in and we were taking care of all their wounds, we would purposely put them in a ward. For instance, we had 4 Marines that were in quite a lengthy battle fight and were very shot up, and we purposely put them in a ward so that they could right away talk about their experience. Now, I must tell you that, coming from Mercy Medical Center here in Cedar Rapids, going to Germany to an Army hospital, it's the largest European American Army hospital in Europe. And so, of course, the F word was flying around all the time. And, it took me about a week. I was kind of offended at first, and then I knew it wasn't directed at me. That's just their culture. It's just their language. And so I think that's something that we really need to focus on, too, as hospice volunteers, is that if a veteran does say something inappropriate, never take it personally, because what they're saying is just part of their culture. And, they've been through it, and the old saying, until you walk in the shoes. So just listen, be a good listener. The itinerary today is that you'll be listening to me talking about veterans' issues, end of life, and then if you have any questions, so please feel free to ask it during or after. So let us bow our heads in prayer right now. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us together today. Give us the courage and insight to help the veterans who are struggling emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Give us the words of comfort to make their last days meaningful. Cover them with the peacefulness they have never felt. In your name, amen. I do get kind of choked up. This issue is very near and dear to my heart, so I always have to blubber once in a while, so just bear with me. Can we imagine, if you have the opportunity to read this book, War and the Soul, by Dr. Edward Tick, and one of the phrases from the book that I took was, Dr. Edward Tick writes, "They come home stumbling out of hell, but we do not see them as they have become. Instead, we offer them beer and turkey dinners, debriefing, and parades. The severity and extent to which veterans suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder is in direct response to our culture's blindness about the war's true cost." And I will be going into several slides on PTSD, but PTSD is very, very real. And I think, and it's, thank God, it's becoming more and more in the media now, and everybody is talking about it. Veterans are finally going to get help. Veterans are very stoic. They don't think they need the help. But finally, the federal government, is really looking into helping our veterans. So it is very real. I sit on the Veterans Memorial Commission, and we have a fellow commissioner that was in Vietnam War. He's been suffering with PTSD, and he has gone through, he's gone for help. But he said, and I just thought it was so touching, that his biggest supporter is his wife. And his wife is the one that encourages him to go to get help. Take your medication. And so if we have that support system, so that of course helps. So we just have to, again, just listen to our veteran, and then as long as we know what the resources are, so we can always direct them. The war is supported by our veterans. I have some statistics on this too. The health risks, each war brings unique health risks. World War II, for instance, was 1941, 1946. So what that war brought to our veterans was infectious diseases, wounds such as frostbite, cold injuries, the mustard gas testing, exposure to nuclear weapons, and nuclear cleanup, meaning we see various cancers and painful effects of frostbite, like peripheral neuropathy. When they just are not walking in a straight line, they have a lot of numbness, tingling, numbing of the hands, fingers, and the feet. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, we see a lot of cold injuries. You know, the MASH, that was on forever. It's still my favorite program. And so, you know, it was so bitterly cold. So again, cold injuries, including frostbite, trench foot from immersion in water. Such injuries can lead to long-term and delayed after effects, including the peripheral neuropathy again, skin cancers, arthritis, cold sensation. These veterans will complain more of feeling cold and achiness when it is cold and increased arthritis pain. Of course, our Vietnam War, which we are seeing more and more because, you know, we're all in that age group now where their health risk is higher now. So these are the ones that didn't receive a good homecoming when they came home. And if you ask them, like I am trying very hard to, when someone has a Vietnam cap on or something, I make a special effort to go and thank them for their service. And you know, they kind of step back like, really? Because, you know, I mean, they were spit on, things were thrown at them. After they went through a hellacious time, it was hell for them. And so these are the ones that we're seeing because they're up and coming. We're going to be having them in our programs more and more from 1959 to 1975. And these were exposed, of course, to Agent Orange exposure and the tropical country leading to hepatitis C, bacterial and fungal infections, and skin diseases. The Agent Orange associated illnesses alone are a variety of cancers. I must share with you, my brother-in-law was in Vietnam from 68, right after we graduated, 68 to 70. He just died Monday night. And in 1990, they found cancer on his tonsil, so they did a radical neck. They pulled all of his teeth. He, of course, had a lot of radiation done. So now as he's been older, so his carotid arteries are hardening from all the radiation he took. And these guys, and he is very stoic. I never heard him complain about pain at all. And you know, he had, his esophagus was narrowing, so he would have to go in and have that expanded. And I mean, it's just like one thing after another. So thank God it's over for him. But I can see, and he was so involved with the veterans. And I don't think he ever really sought help himself. He got satisfaction from helping others. In fact, they live in Dubuque, and so he would drive a bus from Dubuque to our VA in Iowa City just to be around them. Never missed a Memorial Day parade or 4th of July. And so these are the patients, the hospice patients that we're going to be having. The Cold War, of course, is the atomic veteran, and those are nuclear testing, nuclear cleanup, radiation exposure has been associated with disorders such as leukemia, various cancers again, and cataracts, which I found surprising. The next is the Gulf War. That was from 1990 to 1991, a very short war, but there was a lot of toxic agents that our veterans were exposed to. The health effects include the fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and multiple chemical sensitivities. Operation Enduring Freedom, that was my ward, 2001 to 2015, and Operation Iraqi Freedom, of course, from 2003 to 2010. And these, again, had such penetrating wounds, so they have a lot of traumatic brain injury just from the type of weapons that were being used, from all of the bombs that were made and exploded close to them, and again, just the mountainous terrain that they had to go in. And so these are finally brought PTSD as an awareness, so that we all think, Dad had like World War II, Dad had these symptoms, and we didn't do anything about it. So anyway, they're the ones that really brought everything to light for us. Some statistics that we had: an average of 680,000 veterans die annually. Most of the veterans living today have served in times of war. 22 million veterans are living today. The largest segment, 79 million, served during the Vietnam era. 1.8 million served during World War II, and 900 World War II veterans die every day. I know, that's staggering. In addition, 1 in 4 dying Americans is a veteran. More than 1,800 veterans die each day. That's 25% of all the deaths is a veteran. Age related to war experience, the ages for a period of service: Gulf War, they are approximately 37 years old. Vietnam War, between 50 and 75. 60% of the veterans greater than 65 years old are Vietnam veterans. Korean War, they're approximately 76 years old, and World War II is 84 years old. I am one of the nurses on the honor flights, and oh my gosh, it is such an honor to go on these flights. But the last one that we went to, I went on the April-May flight, and then they take the whole summer off because it's so hot in Washington, D.C., and now we're going to have them in September, October again. But George Rickey will be talking to you about that later. Anyway, we had a veteran from World War II. He was 96 years old, and we bring along like 70-some wheelchairs. And we even encourage those veterans that can walk very well to use a wheelchair, because the memorials, many times where we park the buses, are quite a ways, and so we encourage them. And it's their day. Just sit there and enjoy the scenery. There's plenty of guardians. There's plenty of us as nurses there that can help you. But this 96-year-old was just taken back by everything that he saw. He had young children. There's a lot of schools that come there also. That this young child came up to him and thanked him for his service. And, they don't receive enough of that. So again, we have to be good listeners and thank them for their service. I'm going to go into several slides now on PTSD. And just remember, this is a real stress disorder for our veterans. An anxiety disorder that can occur after a traumatic injury or event. Examples of traumatic events include combat or military exposure, child sexual or physical abuse, sexual or physical assault, serious accidents such as a car wreck or natural disasters. Even here at Mercy, occasionally we will have a patient that may latch out at us. And I've had staff members that have totally they broke down, that so much so that I had to take them to the emergency room. But that is just a tip on the iceberg. I mean, of exactly what can happen when people are lashed at and now being shot at. So a traumatic event can be even verbal. Most of the time, though, when you're dealing with veterans, it was much more than that. About 30% of men and women who spend time in war zones experience it, PTSD. An additional 20 to 25 experience symptoms sometime in their lives. More than half of all male Vietnam veterans and almost half of all female Vietnam veterans have experienced clinically serious stress reaction symptoms. What to look for? There's 3 symptom clusters, if you will. Reliving the event, it may even take, well, going back to the fellow commissioner on the Veteran Memorial Commission, he said that on July 4th, even the fireworks, he said that he gets so nervous that he just gets jittery inside. So it might just be dropping a book, slamming of a door, something that reactivates and they relive that event. Avoiding reminders of the trauma and feeling numb and feeling anxious or keyed up, much as my fellow commissioner. Screening tools can be used or referred to a mental health professional, and now at VA in our Iowa City, we are so fortunate to have it so close. And you know, there's buses that will take you there, even from all the small communities around. They'll get you there. And they have screening tools that can show just PTSD and to what degree. The consequences of PTSD is increased medical diagnosis. And you know, our veterans are so stoic that this is a part that they do not go to doctors. And you know, I don't know if it's from when they were standing in the lines getting their shots, so you know, they don't want to go. You know, if they were wounded, maybe in a VA hospital for some time after. The circulatory and musculoskeletal conditions, poor health quality of life due to maybe some risky behavior that they've shown, greater pain intensity and pain interference in functioning, elevated mortality for Vietnam vets, increased rates of substance abuse, increased psychosocial problems. It's probably been 10 years ago now that the Vietnam Wall came here to Cedar Rapids. And our unit, the 422 4th U.S. Army Hospital, we were tasked with guarding that Vietnam Wall. I purposely took the night shift. There was several of us. I wasn't there alone, but anyway. So it was during the night shift that Vietnam vets would come out. Now, I don't know if they were homeless. They never liked the limelight on them. So they would come out and put a pack of cigarettes, a beer, one even left a jacket against the Vietnam Wall, and then they would just stand there with their head down. And I mean, you don't dare go and touch them, number one, unless you really want to get. I learned that too as a young nurse. Never go up to anyone and touch them. You know, call their name first before you touch them, because I've had a few that swung at me. But you wonder what they were thinking, what they were reliving during that time. And then PTSD and the end of life. PTSD can complicate the dying process in several ways. The threat of life, the end of life, may mimic the original trauma. And they may have flashbacks from it. They might have some psychotic behavior like yelling. And so this is all part of the dying process. Your veteran may exhibit anger, sadness, or guilt flashbacks. When my brother-in-law, John Kubish is his name, when he was dying, he became very angry. And I think that's good. You know, you go through the stages of dying, and anger is one of them that you just have to experience, and that's okay. Because if I was dying, I'd be angry too. You know, why me? You know, I'm only 64 years old, why me? And so I think it's okay if they experience that and you allow them to experience the anger. Veterans with PTSD tend to cope by avoiding or ignoring problems. Many times they'll just take more Aleve, more aspirin, more Tylenol, drink more. And you know that, many do take, marijuana or I don't know what else, but so they cope by using these alternatives. And at the end of the day, your liver's not going to like it, and they will become patients. And veterans may have limited or no social support. There is more homeless men and women veterans because for some reason, and again, like my fellow commissioner, they do not have that support system. They don't know about the resources out there, or they just choose not to tap into those resources. So they become homeless because they can't keep a job because there's just many reasons. And the veterans through all the wars just have a hard time expressing emotion. They would rather walk away from it. So these are all things that we need to be aware of. Helping our veterans return. Now, I purposely put this, the cheering applause given to returning veterans is an inappropriate response to the complex experience they share. An attitude of solemn and respectful recognition honor the reality of the veteran's sacrifice and begin to restore a shared ethical regard for the gravity of war's spirit of the war's, again, emotional, physical, spiritual effects. This can take the form of a silent nod or a sincere, quiet thank you and a handshake. It's okay to have parades and such, but again, when they come off that plane and they haven't been home for 18 months or longer, so they just want quiet to be with their families. And again, any sudden noise, bang, might just bring reenactment of exactly what they just went through. So I think, even though it sounds kind of harsh, is an inappropriate response, I think it's just something that we really need to think about when we do have a loved one returning. There's an author, What It Is Like to Go to War, and again, this book is very good. When working with the veteran, volunteers should not ask if a veteran has killed anyone. Again, our wordage is so important, and I think by thanking a veteran for their service, start asking them about what branch they were in, what was their rank, and then ask, can you tell me about what it was like for you? And that many times will open the door. Now, it may not. And it might take 4 or 5 different times meeting with this veteran before he finally opens up. Because just that very question, can you tell me about what it was like for you? He's going to be thinking about that. So the next time you come back, so he might be ready to tell you just bits and pieces, or he might just tell you everything. It's important to let the veteran take the lead after such a question opens up the door, and for veterans to listen with acceptance, for volunteers to listen with acceptance. A veteran volunteer, they know the wordage and the culture. They know about boot camp. They know about returning home. They know about what, even though they may not have been in the same war, they know what handling a gun feels like with combat, having to kill someone. So a volunteer that was a veteran is sometimes very effective. And again, depending on the veteran, that the patient that we're taking care of. So, you know, I'm just giving you some recommendations, but it all depends on that veteran patient. So what can we do as a hospice volunteer? We want to be the best you can be for that veteran. Give them the best care, even though you're with them for a short time. And like in the prayer, you know, and that's what I think about when I see you hospice volunteers, because many times you'll bring like a blanket for our veteran. So cover them with the blanket of peace. And that's what I think about when I think about all of you. Be a great listener. Again, offer a healing presence, one that avoids surprises that can jar and agitate. Again, when you walk in the room, call their name. Do not touch them. Express gratitude for military service. Support the creation of a calm, non-judgmental space. Promotes self-forgiveness and respectful listening. Remember to say name before touching your veteran. I know, I have to tell you that so many times because I had to duck a few times, as I said. Encourage the stories. Actually, a veteran volunteer can share a common language, a cultural bond, the code of conduct and honor. May facilitate dissolving barriers of being very stoic and secretive. Again, our veterans are very secretive. And you know, we've all heard that Dad never talked about what he experienced in World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War. Now our younger soldiers coming back from the Operation Enduring Freedom, so they don't talk about it. And offer camaraderie. Open that door to conversation, but never push. Develop trust. And I think this is so important. Offer camaraderie, open the door to conversation, but never push. Develop that trust. Be prepared for unique challenges, such as, again, PTSD. You don't know. They probably haven't had the screenings, but it's probably been there for years. Depression, problems with drugs and alcohol, anxiety, you know, and they may be detoxing, which isn't pretty for them at all. Anxiety, anger, irritability. They might not want to talk, and that's okay. So, and the next time might be a little bit better. Chronic pain, confusion, difficulty. With the detoxing, many times they will get confused. And then again, you might be hearing more of their war flashbacks when they're detoxing. They just cannot concentrate. If you would give them something to read, they cannot concentrate. They can probably read it, but they would never comprehend what they read. Many eating problems, hopelessness, helplessness, flashbacks, guilt, complaining of headaches, loss of interest, nightmares, noise or light irritation. So again, create your environment. You know, if it means lowering the lights, maybe they don't want that door closed, that's okay. You know, many have had reckless behavior probably all of their adult life. I mean, think about it, like Vietnam. That was my era, so I keep going back to that. But same thing with World War II and Korean War. They were young. I mean, they graduated when they were 18, you know, took the oath, and they were gone. So think how scary that was for them. And I know many of you already know that. The social withdrawal and trouble sleeping. So there we go. You don't sleep at night. And so then you cannot concentrate, so it's all collective, and it just snowballs after that. You know, our veterans, be prepared for unique needs. And these needs can be influenced by combat or non-combat experience. And you know, many times, and I've heard this, that even though they didn't actually see combat, they feel kind of guilty about that. Because maybe somebody from their own hometown got killed, and here they were, you know, a desk job or passing out supplies. They never saw it, but still they feel guilty. So these are unique needs that, you know, it's okay. You were called, you did your mission. They gave you a job, you did it. And it depends what war they served in. If they were a POW, that's huge. If they have or have had PTSD, once you have it, you never really get rid of it. But they haven't had the screening. The branch of service and their rank, and whether they were enlisted or drafted. You know, I've talked a lot about our veterans being so stoic, but they are very humble, because they will poo-poo, you know, if you thank them for their service. So you know, they say, oh, that was okay, or they may not respond at all, as I said. And so it is, they're very stoic, very humble. They're fearful of admitting pain. They feel it's a sign of weakness. And that all goes with boot camp. I mean, I'm sure that the boot camp for the Korean and Vietnam era, you know, now the sergeants or drill sergeants, they have limitations. I mean, you're not going to be hitting these kids, and you're not going to be doing whatever our soldiers went through. But some of the things they probably heard was no pain, no gain. Few good men will actually make it. And once a Marine, always a Marine. So these are things that were so ingrained in them that they went through their whole life thinking this. So they just never complain of pain. Social isolations, even with loved ones. And again, you know, any sudden moves or anything, they just feel jittery and nervous inside. And we can't see that, but they feel it. And that's why they have the social isolation. They just want to go away. Our veterans have their own culture of being stoic. Again, the major aspect of their training was to develop, having them be very stoic. Requires developing an inner strength to face any adversity with courage, such as the dying process. So it was so ingrained in them during their training that now, even during the dying process, they are very stoic. They will not complain of pain. But of course, there are ways that you can tell if they are in pain, and so the nursing staff will give them something anyway, unless they absolutely refuse. It's still their choice. And that's another very good issue, is allow them to make their own decisions. It may not be the right one, and you can suggest, so that again they can think about it, but it's still their process. They are the ones leaving us, so they can make the decisions. Well, and these, I've said already, may lead to underreporting or minimizing pain or other physical suffering, can complicate efforts to relieve suffering, and can contribute to unresolved grief or guilt. And again, thank the veteran for their service. Hearing their story. Now, we've been through most of this now, but many times the conversation may start by thanking the veteran for his service. What branch of service? Where did you serve? They like talking about, the good times that they might have had in Korea, in Germany. So, they might want to talk about the good times and not talk about the bad times. But that's okay. Anything just to make them open up. Sit in silence many times, because you know what? Many times you're going to open that gate and they will keep on talking. So sit in silence and be a good listener. Intimate conversation is a sense of healing for the veteran and the family, because some of the things they may share with you, they never even told a family member. So intimate conversations that have been very hard for them to talk about, even to their family, they may share with you. And respond with empathy. I'm sorry that this happened to you. I am here to listen to your story. Ensure privacy. Celebrate the accomplishments with them. And again, they're very humble. But what they might be telling you is an accomplishment that they never picked out of that conversation. So applaud them for it. Pick out those little things that was an actual accomplishment. Thank veterans for their service to our country, which may be a bit strange for the Vietnam vets, which we talked about. And to accept harmful, everlasting, welcome home appreciation. It may take a little longer for them to actually accept that we are thanking them for their service. Now, in summary, our overall goal of end-of-life care is to help our veterans live pain-free with dignity and purpose until the end. So if you have any questions, I'll be here after, and thank you. You've been so attentive, and again, take good care of our veterans. And Mary Clapp is out at the hospice house, and she is a veteran. In fact, my daughter, Penny, is one of the nurses there too. So what Mary has set up is that when a veteran dies, they have a flag quilt that they cover them with when the mortician comes, and then she stands at the end of the hall and she salutes them. And I'm sure the families are very taken back by it, but I think that is such a huge tribute to our veterans. So I'll be here after, and thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is George Rickey. I'm the Public Relations and Media Coordinator for Eastern Iowa Honor Flight. I'd like to throw just a few numbers at you very quickly, and then I want to show you something so that you become familiar with what the Eastern Iowa Honor Flight does in relation to our veterans and the patients that you may come into contact with. Since we began flying in 2009, we have transported 1,707 veterans to Washington, D.C. to see the memorials dedicated to their service and their sacrifice. What I'm going to show you right now, I kind of laughingly refer to as our 5-minute view of a 17-hour day. So this is what a typical honor flight day is. We start at 5:30 in the morning. We tell the veterans to meet us at the airport at 5:30. I usually have to get there about 4:15 for the morning news. And usually there are a half dozen veterans waiting for me at 4:30. They're up and ready to go. We fly a chartered aircraft to Washington, D.C. Our wheels are up at 7 o'clock, and we fly directly into Reagan National Airport. And when we land at Reagan, the airport fire department will honor the veterans with a tribute. It's called a water cannon salute. It's a tribute given to retiring military flyers and also to veterans, as you'll see here. Airport fire trucks line both sides of the runway. We taxi in, And despite what the one veteran said, the airplane really did need to be washed. When we land, they get their first surprise. There are a lot of people to greet them, shake their hands, thank them for their service, and let them know they are appreciated. This little girl told her mom, "I want to go to the airport and meet a veteran." It was one of the best pictures I've ever taken. Our first stop then is the World War II Memorial, where they are greeted and they get a chance to see the memorial dedicated to their service. And it's interesting, you will see veterans from World War II walking through that memorial. They will come to a battle or a campaign or a theater they may have been involved in, and they just stop, they drop their heads, you see them take a deep breath, and they just get lost in reverie as they remember what they had gone through. Our next stop is the Lincoln, Korean, and Vietnam memorials. They are all in one area, so we are able to get all three of these stops at once. The Korean War Memorial, when they did the sculptures of this patrol, the facial features are so lifelike. I've had veterans stop and say, "That looks like somebody I knew." They did such a great job. And again, you'll see Korean veterans who'll see these images that are etched into a black granite wall. They'll stop and they'll look, and they can identify with maybe an image on the wall. And then finally, of the three is the Vietnam Memorial. We are now going to begin taking Vietnam veterans, as is their due. If there's one group of veterans who deserve a really heartfelt thanks, it is the Vietnam veterans. So if you see a Vietnam veteran, or if you know one, in addition to thanking him for his service, tell him welcome home. They really appreciate that. Then, probably the most iconic memorial in Washington, D.C., one that everybody knows, the Marine Corps Memorial, or as it's fondly referred to, the Iwo Jima Memorial. From there, we traveled to probably what is the most sacred ground in America, Arlington National Cemetery. While there, we witnessed the laying of wreaths at the Tomb of the Unknown. We also witnessed the changing of the guard. I had two veterans standing next to me when they were playing taps, and one of them looked over at his buddy and said, "You know, we have a lot of buddies laying out there in those fields. What can you say to something like that?" From there, we traveled to the Air Force Memorial, which is one of the newer memorials in Washington, D.C. It's 3 spires, 230 feet in the air, representing the missing man formation. That's why there are only 3 spires and not 4. And then we bring them back. And if you've ever been out to the airport for one of our welcome homes, you know what I'm talking about when I tell you it is a very, very emotional night. If you haven't been, I challenge you, come out to the airport on the night that we're coming home. But usually we get home about 10:30, 10:45, and parking is free. And I absolutely guarantee you, if this does not grab you, then I want you to check your pulse, because this is a very emotional moment. So that basically is the Eastern Iowa Honor Flight story. Again, as I say, we've transported 1,707 veterans. The Hospice organization and the Eastern Iowa Honor Flight have a common link. A lot of people may not think about that, but we do, and it is the veteran. You figure that the military gets the veterans in their youth. We see them as, when we get them, they're elders. And unfortunately, as hospice, you will end up seeing many of them or dealing with many of them in end of life. I have found that these veterans are probably some of the most selfless, unassuming individuals that I've ever met. A lot of them don't want to talk about it, what they went through with their experiences. But there may be something that may trigger them one day that they may want to talk. And probably the best tools that you can make available to them, your ears to listen, and your hand to reach out and shake their hands and thank them for their service. There is a common misconception out there that a veteran has to have served in combat or been overseas to qualify for an honor flight. That is not true, and if anybody asks you if that's true, I want you to work as our liaisons and tell them, no, it's not. The qualifier for an honor flight is that when the country called, you put on the uniform, you left the farm, you left your classroom, you left your job, you put the uniform on, and you were willing to go off to a fate uncertain. You had no idea what was going to happen to you. We've had veterans that were still in basic training when the war ended. We've had veterans that were in the Battle of the Bulge. We had one veteran 3 years ago. He was captured by the Japanese in the Philippines. He survived the Bataan Death March and survived 4 years as a POW. This was probably one of the most moving moments that I've ever experienced, because by the time we were able to get him on an honor flight, his vision had deteriorated to the point where basically all he could see were shadows and shapes and movement. Didn't want to stop his granddaughter. His granddaughter went as his guardian. She spent the entire day wheeling him around his wheelchair. When she'd get to a memorial, she would read the inscriptions on the memorial. She would tell him what he was seeing. That veteran never quit smiling the entire day. He was smiling when he got back at 10:30 that night. So there are a lot of things that you can do for our veterans. And you may get questions from family. Family may say, well, what do you know about the honor flight? You can refer a family to our website, which is eihonorflight.org, where they can learn all the information they want. If the veteran is physically able to go and thinks he wants to go, you can get an application, get it into us, and we'll get him on a flight. But the important thing is to be there to listen, to empathize, and to appreciate them for what they did. We had a veteran that laid in a frozen foxhole in Korea for 12 hours after being wounded before they were able to get him back behind his lines. I can't even visualize what that must have been like. But for him to have lived it, and especially since many of these veterans went off when they were 17, 18 years old, they have no concept of what that was about to be like. So, again, our mission is to honor our veterans. Your mission is to honor our veterans. We do it on two different fields, but the end mission is the same. So for that concludes my presentation. I would like to thank you for the work that you do for our veterans. I would like to thank our veterans for the work that they've done for our country. Thank you very much.